Hi, in this video, you will discover the way to have more confidence, more depth in character, more empathy, more peak experiences, and an increased capacity for emotional intimacy by using the Carl Jung's way to embrace your shadow. Carl Jung has caught the attention of both academics and seekers of spirituality. One of his greatest discoveries was his concept of shadow. Shadow, by Carl Jung, is a symbol that represents the secret side of every human psyche. The shadow consists of subtle aspects of an individual's personality that are considered as unacceptable and hidden in the deep parts of his mind. Shadow characteristics are formed mostly from shame. These characteristics are thoughts, desires, feelings, cravings, and urges that the ego does not accept. For example, in the case of sexual taboos, you may have heard that certain behaviors or desires are not accepted by your family, so you hide them. And thus, the desire is cast into the shadows, only to show themselves when the environment is safe from judgment, or even completely repressed. Shadow traits can also be positive aspects of personality. You may have associated your natural assertiveness with shame because you were disciplined away from it at a young age. Or perhaps your creativity has been neglected because you have learned that it is less valuable than hard skills. This is why shadow integration is an important tool for making progress in the process of individuation. A term coined by Carl Jung that represents the journey the mind must go through to achieve wholeness. This video will cover some aspects of shadow. These topics include the shadow's neurosis, individuation, and making peace with the shadow. The shadow's neurosis. If we understand anything from the unconscious, we know that it cannot be swallowed. We also know that it is dangerous to suppress it, because the unconscious is life, and this life turns against us if it is suppressed, as happens in neurosis. Carl Jung. Carl Jung discovered that shadow can provide great insight and inspiration. He also knew that it could cause a lot of damage to one's psyche if not integrated. Repression or failure to embrace the shadows is a recipe for psychological problems. The shadow was indestructible, and even if it was suppressed in the dark, its signs would still subtly appear. Here are some examples of what these sensors might look like to an observer. Psychological projection. Psychological projection is the projection of an individual's own shadow traits onto another person, or even a group of people. Psychological projection acts as a defense mechanism that temporarily relieves a person from the pain of facing their shadow. Projections may occur even unconsciously and unintentionally. Psychological projection can be considered as a neurosis because if gone unchecked, it can reduce one's quality of life. Those who constantly project their shadow on others will often push these people away and end up wondering why they are lonely. Over-identification with persona. Excessive identification with persona is the characteristic of a non-integrated shadow. Individuals with this type of shadow suppression can appear superficial or lack depth. This is because they only present a small part of their personality to the world. Over-identification with the persona can be seen in a person discussing only certain topics, such as work, at more intimate social gatherings, or with family. This person may also show more than usual pride in their own accomplishments. Many of these overexpressions are due to insecurity, which is another sign of a non-integrated shadow. Lack of emotional intimacy. Individuals with non-integrated shadow can appear guarded, especially in friendships and romantic relationships. For a partner, it may seem that it is almost impossible to go beyond a certain level of getting to know them. It begins to appear that the relationship lacks depth, and the bond may begin to dissolve. A good recent example of this is the TV show Dexter. Dexter is a serial killer trying to maintain the appearance of a normal life. Dexter has a lot of problems with intimate relationships because he is unable to share his shadow side, the murderer, with his closest partners. This repression and hiding of the shadow causes a lot of internal stress to Dexter and often leads to the end of relationships. Shadow exhibitions. In some cases, a repressed shadow may force itself out of a person and dominate their character for periods of time. In extreme cases, this can cause antisocial behavior such as considerations of harm or violence. In less extreme cases, shadow traits may appear as rudeness or bad intent. Have you ever been with someone who rubs you wrong, even though you did nothing to them? They may be shadow-possessed, giving off bad energy due to their unease. If you are able to maintain a psychological distance from them, you can see this behavior for what it is and reduce its effect on you. Insecurity. If one is unable to accept one's own shadow, it can lead to low self-esteem. If an individual labels certain parts of themselves as dirty or embarrassing, it can lead to an overall negative self-perception. If left untreated, this negative self-perception is able to completely envelop one's entire psyche. This may result in symptoms such as anxiety and depression. It is important to alleviate shadow fears by recognizing and accepting shadow traits and working to turn them into positive aspects of our personalities. How to make peace with the shadow. The shadow is a living part of the character and therefore wants to live with it in some form. It cannot be argued out of existence or justified into harmlessness. Carl Jung. Carl Jung realized that mental balance could not exist without direct confrontation with the shadow. This confrontation requires the individual to explore and acknowledge every aspect of their shadow, no matter how hideous it is. Simply recognizing the shadow trait and accepting it in reality will bring more balance to the mental landscape. It is even possible to channel these shadow energies into positive energy or bring it entirely to the light where it belongs. This inner working process can lead to an exponential increase in success and inner satisfaction. It is not easy to undergo the process of shadow integration, although the fruits are well worth the challenge. Carl Jung's shadow work. Shadow work is the practice of confronting the unconscious through the practice of introspection. This can be done with the help of psychoanalysis or through more individual efforts such as meditation. Carl Jung practiced his psychoanalytic techniques with his patients. Jung also suggested that there are many ways one can access one's own shadow. Shadow work is a unique process for each individual. There are 4 basic steps in Jungian shadow work. 1. Accept the fact that our shadow traits cannot be suppressed from existence. 2. Meditate and accept the root of each shadow trait. 3. Work to bring aspects of shadow traits into the light. 4. Allow shadow traits to express themselves in healthy ways. The unconscious mind can be accessed in many ways, from traditional meditation to more experimental forms, such as psychedelics. Any confrontation with the subconscious is beneficial, even shocking experiences. Dreams are also another great way to get into the subconscious. Another very effective method in shadow work is active introspection. Active introspection allows you to talk with and gain knowledge from the characters that compose your mind. Individuation. Individuation is a process of transformation by which the personal and collective unconscious are brought into consciousness. For example, by means of dreams, active imagination, or free association, to be assimilated into the whole personality. It is a completely natural process necessary for the integration of the psyche, for the singularity has a comprehensive therapeutic effect on person, both mentally and physically. Carl Jung. In Carl Jung's concept of individuation, one must fully confront and accept their own shadow. Jung compares this journey to the fable of a hero who must battle a dragon to reach the hard-to-get treasure. The one who is able to recognize and explore all aspects of her shadow while still being civilized is the one who acquires the treasure. The fruits of this journey can be more confidence, more depth in character, more empathy, more peak experiences, and an increased capacity for emotional intimacy. Shadow traits are not all bad and are often beneficial to the individual and even their community. Leaders, thinkers, entrepreneurs, and artists may reach new levels of success by making progress in their own individualization process. Oftentimes, an enormous amount of beauty in one's personality is in the shadows, and it only needs light to express itself. It is so liberating to accept yourself as a whole, and the mental peace of doing so cannot help but radiate outward. This is the importance of having a basic understanding of Carl Jung's concept of shadow. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung.